Hey, this is Anjelica Cazares, and welcome back to another episode of Season 2 of the Juan Words podcast.
And this is Juan Alanis. Glad you're with us.
In today's episode, I want to cover a topic that we kind of passed over on our last episode. And I think we didn't do it any justice because we vaguely mentioned our loved ones that passed away. Mm-hmm. And I want to dedicate this episode to them.
Yeah, and things on our last episode got a little intense. So if you're listening to these episodes in chronological order, the episode right before this one, we started talking about, I don't even remember now at this point what we were talking about, but somehow we ended up talking about like your sister and my dad who recently passed away, and it just got really intense where we both got emotional, and that was kind of unexpected. It was like, okay. So I don't know where this conversation is gonna go today, but we'll see. But,
so what I wanted to do is I wanted to dedicate this episode to them. Mm-hmm. I wanted to record it because at least I will have a sort of kind of memoir or a dedication to them here, and I feel like we haven't done that necessarily. Like, well, first of all, not here on the podcast, but both of them in the same place. Mm-hmm. We talked about them, on other platforms and other spaces, but here I want to bring all the memories, the information, what we know, like how and what they meant to us personally. Mm-hmm. On this episode. And so I had to restart because I was telling Juan that I don't remember the timeline of like when my sister was diagnosed and when she passed away. And like I said, I wanted to do it justice here, so I had to get up and go get my phone to make sure I was very precise, because every time I think about it, it comes and goes. Mm-hmm. Like for me, it feels like it was for me it feels like it was months ago, but it hasn't been.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things I think that you never get used to, the idea of it fully. Yeah. Because you can just forget in an instant, and you can be like, oh, I'm going to call my dad, or, oh, my dad, I think you remember, oh, it's my dad's birthday's coming up. And then next thing you know, you're like, oh, wait, but my dad's not, like, my dad's passed, and so then it's like, you can forget in little moments. And I think at the beginning, it's a little hazy. Like, because you don't really, like, because it still hurts so much that you don't even have like a good like handle on like the time.
Yeah, I think this year was the year that at the beginning of this year and the ending of last year, I finally understand that my sister is gone. Mm-hmm. Like it has, I guess I've accepted it, and so I understand she's gone. Yeah. I always knew she was gone, but I didn't know she was fully gone. Yeah. Like, I always thought she was, I don't know why I keep thinking or thinking that it's kind of like it's all a mistake and she's going to come back, Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's because my sister died at a young age. Yeah. And so she wasn't done. She wasn't finished with life, and she kind of passed.
So do you want to talk a little bit about what happened with your sister? Like what was the diagnosis and things like that?
Yeah. Okay. So, my family, my mom has. Starting with my mom. My mom has a history of pre-cancerous and cancerous cells. After she had me, she was diagnosed with uterine cancer, and they had to do a full vasectomy. I think it's called. Is that the term?
I don't know.
They had to take out her reproductive system basically out, and so I think all the women in my family have had issues with that space in our body, because we're predispositioned to some of that, right? And so my sister unfortunately did have cancer, cervical cancer. When she was diagnosed, well, what happened was that she had taken the kids to the doctor, I think, to get the shots, like the regular shots that they get. And the doctor like looked at her and seen her, and he was like, why are you pale? Like, are you okay? Do you feel fine? She's like, no, I've been feeling tired. And I remember for a very long time that she had been feeling really, really tired. And I remember ominous, but she told me, she was like, what if I have cancer? And I was like, why don't you go get checked? And she'd go get checked, but she didn't have any insurance, and so the clinics that she would go to would be like the community clinics, you know, the ones that where they have patients that just come one time, those kind of clinics, and they really don't have a history with them, and so they don't know. And so when she would go, they would tell her like very basic information or basic things, like, oh, maybe it's this and maybe it's that, and that was it. They would send her on her way. And I'm not blaming these clinics. What I'm saying is that she didn't have a rapport with like a doctor.
That's a reality for a lot of people. And
so when she took the kids to their doctor, he was like, no, he was like, you look really pale. He was like, you might be anemic, you know, there might be an issue. Why don't you should probably go to the hospital. He told her just like that, go to the hospital. And she went to the hospital. She was there. She had been bleeding for a very long time, and which is what made her go white in the face and her lips, and which is, the doctor was like, we should go to the hospital, like, you're bleeding a lot, who knows what it is. And 2 days later she was diagnosed. She had cervical cancer. She was stage 3-4, just like that. And so
the timeline from then from the diagnosis to when she passed, like what was the timeline, just to for frame of reference?
It was a short timeline.
So it was a short, a couple of months,
about a year and a half. Yeah. Like, she didn't make it to the next Christmas.
So, you know, I think for my dad, which is what I'm kind of sharing, the person I'm sharing about today, is like, he was diagnosed, you know, kind of similar, where he had been having a pain, I think in his stomach, where he had been having pain, and he didn't want to go to the doctor. And you know, my mom kept telling him, like, well, you should probably get that checked out, you should probably go to the doctor. And he never like took it that serious. And you know how we are, like, you know, we're taking remedios and we figure out, like, you know, this makes me feel better for the moment, and this and that. So you kind of learn to tolerate
the pain.
And so I think eventually it got bad enough to where he felt like he needed to go to the doctor. And then I remember, like, we were just like, they told us, like, I don't even, like, it's kind of blurry to me, but I remember, like, going with all my brothers and sisters. We all went to the MD Anderson, and they had already found out at that point that there was that it was cancer. And so I remember going there, and then they told us, like, that it was stage 4 colon cancer. And then we were like, what? Like, stage 4? And they were like, yeah, it's pretty advanced. And you know, so like immediately after that, he had, like, pretty quickly after that, he had surgery. They took out you know, a big tumor. And then he had to go through treatments. But I think to establish a kind of a timeline, and then we'll get more into depth as we continue the conversation. But you know, from the time he was diagnosed to the time he passed, it was about 3 years that he was living with this condition. And there was a moment where it had subsided, and we thought, you know, he was fine for a little bit, but then it came back. And you know, it's like that, for anybody that's in the process of grieving, I think, you know, I think part of the conversation that we're sharing is just kind of how our grief process, I guess, in this.
I remember when your dad was diagnosed, we were when you told me, we were standing on the porch, and then I remember telling you, like, people live in stage 4 cancer for quite a while sometimes. Like, they can be in stage 4 cancer for years.
And I had no clue, like, I know it sounds ignorant, but I had no clue, like, what the different stages of cancer were.
Me neither.
Like, I knew people always talked about cancer, and cancer was a big thing. but I had never, like, nobody in my family had ever had that, at least not my immediate family.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know, I just was, ignorance is bliss, right? So I was like, I don't need to know. So I didn't ever like looked it up. And so when they said it was stage 4, I was like, is that good or is that bad? And I had to go do, like, you look online and this and that. And then you see like, oh, stage 4, and then you start hearing like all these different things. Yeah. And a lot of them, like, sometimes, like, depending on what you're looking for, you can go look for things, and then you can go down that path of like everything is bad. Yeah. So, you know, that was kind of it was a shocking kind of experience at the beginning.
Yeah, it is shocking to hear that when she was at the hospital when she was diagnosed, and I remember when I showed up to the hospital because they had admitted her, and we were there, and I was in the room with her, and she was like, they're gonna wheel me off to go do the ultrasound, like inside, right? They're gonna go do the ultrasound because I'm bleeding a lot, and they need to know exactly what's going on. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, that's what they're gonna have to do. Like, they're gonna fix you, like whatever it is that's going on, they're gonna fix you. And she was telling me so that had happened, and then they were sending her for a CT scan, and she was like, I don't feel right. And I was like, why? She goes, because they haven't told me anything about my ultrasound. Like, they sent me immediately to go get the CT scan. She was like, I don't think it's good. And I was like, Erika, don't worry about it. I was like, I think you'll be okay. And, you know, my first instinct is to want to like cuddle her and be like, no, like, don't go to the worst. Like, you're okay. Yeah. And I don't know. And I think back to that moment, and, you know, the doctor came in and told us that some of us couldn't be in the room. Came back in the room, and she was like, they told me it's cancer. And I was like, the fuck? And that, like, I don't, from there, I just remember going back to sitting down, and I remember just like, I think I told you, explained this to you, where I got this overwhelming feeling, and it never left me. It never subsided, like this desperate feeling, like it just came on immediately, and I couldn't shake it. Yeah. And the whole experience with her cancer was like that, and I didn't know like what to do, and I tried to stay positive, and I tried to stay hopeful, and I didn't want to accept. I kept waiting for somebody to tell us, like, no, it's a mistake, it's not that. We thought it was, but it's not. I kept waiting for that moment for them to tell us, like it's a mistake on our part, you know, whatever. And it never came, and the months kept passing, and she was going through treatment, and, you know, she had lost, like, Erika's cancer got really bad really fast. I mean, she was bones by the time she passed away. Yeah, I mean, like, that's the unfortunate thing about chemotherapy. It ravaged, like, it just the cancer itself, like, just because they stopped treatment on her. Yeah. And so after they stopped treatment on her, they just kept telling, like, they just kept trying to explain to her, like, kind of to just accept her fate, accept her, you know, what it is. And she kept asking, like, no, like, you know, can you try this, can you try that? And I remember one of the doctors coming in and then telling her something along the lines of like there's nothing more we can do for you, like, but very aggressive. And I was like, again, excuse my words here, but I was like, the fuck, like, what the fuck is wrong with this fucking doctor? Like, why is she being a bitch? Like, okay, like, yeah, maybe you can't do anything for her, but fuck, where's your bedside manner? But I think because we had something like that where, you know, where I think the doctors at a certain point have to get, like, kind of aggressive a little bit for it to really set in. Because I think, how do you become aggressive with somebody? I think, like, you know, there, like you said, there's a desperation
that you want something to like, you're like, no, but we have to figure something out. There has to be a solution. There has to be something that you can do.
I would never accept that you have to be aggressive with patients because you want them to understand.
Well, something. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that's justified. I'm just saying that I feel like some doctors like feel like they have to like kind of like, it's almost like shaking you into reality and being like, hey, like, don't stop like trying to go down this path of like where I'm telling you the reality. And because we had a doctor like that too, that when my dad first went to look, I remember when we were I do remember when like finding out, and then we were all like all of us were sitting in a room with him, and then like we were all trying to be strong, but we would all like take turns going outside in the hallway, and we would all like kind of cry with each other. And it was hard because we were like, oh man, this is like the first time we were dealing with anything like this.
Yeah.
But, he went through chemotherapy the first round. And, chemotherapy is, I understand why it's a decision for the individual who has the cancer, whether or not they want to go through it. Mm-hmm. Because it really does so much like harm to your body. Even though it's doing so much good, like it's doing good by killing the cancer, mm-hmm. it does so much, takes such a toll on your body. Mm-hmm. And so then the second, was your dad doing chemo and radiation? No, he did chemo. And then once he finished, when they told him that he didn't have it anymore, mm-hmm. and then I think when it came back the second time, they asked him if he wanted to do it again. And at first he didn't want to. And, we were like, well, we have to respect his decision. Yeah. And so even though we were like, well, what that means. If you don't do it, it keeps spreading and it keeps growing. Mm-hmm. And then I think they wanted him to do, like he went back for a checkup, and then by the time he went back for a checkup, it had spread. So it was in his lymph nodes at that point. And so it was really uncontrollable by that point. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, but like it gets so intense, like in terms of like how severe it is. Yeah. That it's hard to. So I think at one point, one of the doctors, when we were like insisting that there had to be another way, she was pretty aggressive with us too, and mm-hmm. I remember like getting mad, like, who does this lady think she is? Like what the hell? Like why are they talking to us like this? Mm-hmm. And you get angry, but. Now thinking back to it, I'm like, I think maybe that was her way of trying to like say, hey, like I'm being honest with you, like you really need to start thinking about hospice care at this point. Yeah, but that's not what they say. Like there's verbs. Yeah. There's verbs, there's vocabulary to be able to talk to you, to tell you, hey, like there's nothing we can do. There's nothing in this hospital that we can do mm-hmm. to help him. All you need to do is just manage pain at this point until they pass. Yeah. That's not the way they were talking to us though. That's not the way they're just, and I don't know, maybe I don't know. And sometimes I think, is it because of like who we are? Mm-hmm. Like this is the way they talk to us? Mm-hmm. I don't know. And I questioned that for a very long time, but I don't want to spend a lot of time there. Yeah. I definitely don't want to spend a lot of time talking about like the doctors and stuff like that. Yeah. Because I want to dedicate this to them. Mm-hmm. But so my sister did end up passing like a year and a half later after that. Like I said, her struggle with cancer was quite severe. It took a huge toll on her body. She spent a lot of time in pain. Mm-hmm. Just days like in bed in pain, throwing up, bleeding. Mm-hmm. And at the end, the last 2 weeks were difficult to watch. Mm-hmm. Because she wanted so bad, desperately, to get better. Mm-hmm. And she was so mad of what was happening that like the pain just was so much, and it was so intense, and she was so upset at what was happening. Mm-hmm. And so my mom, it was starting to take a toll on my mom because she was taking care of my sister at that point for about like 2-3 months. Mm-hmm. About 2 months, I think, by the time my sister was completely bedridden, like she was in bed. Mm-hmm. But at the end, the last 2-3 weeks was my mom wasn't sleeping. She was there by her bedside,
a lot. She would go home, get 2-3 hours of sleep, get up, go back to my sister, because my sister ended up living in the house behind my mom, and so my mom would just go home, I guess, eat, rest for a moment, and then just go right back. And she did that every day. And it was difficult to watch Erika literally skin and bones, to the point where I made the decision to have a closed casket for her. I didn't want that vision to be the last memory of my sister for people. I didn't want that. I didn't want them to see her like that.
Yeah.
She was young and vibrant, and I wanted them to remember her by their memories, by pictures, by videos they had of her. I never wanted them to see her like that. And I thought to myself, well, if they wanted to visit her, because she was open for any visitors to come visit her, even at the hospital, some people would come and visit her. I'm still mad about this too. Yeah. Some people would come visit her, and then they're at the house. They knew she was home. They could have easily gone to go visit her. And she was open and accepting for people to come visit her. And those who didn't make it to see her alive, they didn't make it to see her alive.
Yeah.
And knowing my sister, making that decision to have a closed casket was the best decision.
Yeah.
And I you know, my nieces and nephews, they got an opportunity to, there was that time period to go say bye to their mother with the casket open. And then when it came time for the public viewing, we closed the casket. I have no regrets over that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard once you go into hospice care, it takes a toll on everybody, because I think it's hard. So, with us, like we tried to do our best to take turns, like taking care of my dad.
He stayed at home, right? In hospice.
He was at home in hospice with my...
at home hospice care. Yeah.
Yeah. My mom was his main caretaker. So, my mom was his main caretaker. She was there, 24/7 with him. And the rest of us, we all kind of took turns, staying, as often as we could, being there as often as we could.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why I always do this, but no, I mean, I think it's just hard to talk about. But, at the end, it was hard because, he couldn't do anything for himself. So you had to do everything for him. But, he did have a lot of people come visit him, and I think, he had brothers and sisters. He had cousins, and that's one thing that I was really grateful for, that, a lot of people showed up for him. And, like my cousin, like they would bring him, he loved music. So they would bring him, like they would come and play music for him. And it was at this point where he couldn't speak anymore. And that to me was like, man, like that meant a lot to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really beautiful watching people come and play guitar for him. And he was like in and out of it from the drugs. And I remember there was one time where he like wanted to cheer on the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But I remember like one time, towards the end, like, there was one time where, we all kind of knew he wasn't getting any better. Some of us were more not that we had accepted it, but some of us were more in tune with the reality of the situation. And some of us were in denial, when I'm talking about my siblings and myself. And but there was one moment I remember when he was like really thin and he really couldn't walk anymore. He was in a wheelchair, but his brother came over and they played the guitar. And he got up and danced, and and he sang and everything. And to me that was a beautiful moment, because I was like, just us there with him. You know, and it was him being himself, you know, through the cancer, through the treatment, through what he was going through. And I'll just share that memory from that experience, because like you said, I want to make this about their life before that, not necessarily just their life when they were going through this treatment.
Yeah. No, I'm happy you're sharing that. There's a memory that, so my sister we tried in-home hospice care, and it didn't go very well. It started getting very intense very fast, because she departed us very quickly right after. Like, all of that became that 3 months condensed into like very short period of time. And so the last like couple of days, they said, you know, she went to hospice, in a hospice home, and she was like not at all conscious at all. She was unaware of what was happening. And so she didn't like taking pictures when she was like she had lost her hair. She didn't want to take pictures when she, you know, looking thin. And she was like, no, I don't want my picture taken. I'm like, no, we'll do it some other time or something. And I remember when she was in hospice the first time, because she had ended up coming home. Somebody made the decision of her to come home, and then we made the decision for her to go back to hospice. But the first time that she was there, and this was all within days, like 5 days of leaving the hospice and then going right back to the hospice. The first time that she was in hospice, she didn't like getting her picture taken. I remember she like called me over. She was like, "Hey, come here, Anjelica, come here." And I was like, "Okay." And I go sit on the bed next to her. Like, even like with my sister, like even touching her would hurt her. Like, you would touch her and she would scream from pain. And she would scream, she would yell, and she like when we would have to sit her down to like pee or something, she'd scream, "Don't grab me like that." And it would just, she was in pain, in severe pain. And so the first time she was in hospice, she, like I said, she called me over to the bed, and she was like, "Turn on your camera." And I was like, I turned on my camera, and she was like, "Take a picture." And she wanted me to front face the camera to take a picture of her and me. I was like, I didn't want to. I didn't want to. I don't know if she wanted to see herself or what, but I didn't want to. I was like, "Look, Erika," I was like, "I'll take a picture of them. Look who's here. We'll take a picture of them." And she was like, "Take the picture and take the picture." I was like, I don't want you to see yourself like that. Like, I want you to remember yourself with the valiant person that you were. Like, I didn't want her to feel uneasy. And so I was like, no. I was like, "We'll take a picture of somebody else." But I wanted to share that memory. I mean, I know it's not as gracious as your dad's, but it's a good memory. And I remember, you know what I remember about Erika? When she went to get baptized. Yeah, she did get baptized. We've always been religious in our family. We were born Catholic. She was baptized in the Catholic Church. She did get baptized. Immediately after she had found out she had cancer. When she started to get thin and sick. She started to go to church. She found Jesus again, and she started dedicating the remainder of her life to her kids and her devotion to God. We're very lucky that at the last year she wrote a lot. She wrote devotions. She wrote letters.
You know what I remember about her when she got baptized is that she was so ready, like, to get baptized,
to do it. Yeah,
like she was so like ready and confident in doing it. And you know, that's what stood out to me, is that she was just, you know, she was so sure of what she was doing.
You know, I was fine this whole time, not crying, until you said, "You know what I remember about Erika?" And I was like, So that is my sister's name, Erika. I didn't mention it. But that is my sister's name, Erika Juanita. So I did one, and this is, and I knew this is where the part that was going to get me the most is talking about their life in general. The part that bothers me the most, and this is where I want to record this. This is why I wanted to record this. It's because my sister's life was difficult, quite difficult, and she always tried really hard to try to overcome all her adversities. And I think she had a lot of regrets. When she was diagnosed, she knew she wasn't ready. And she confronted some things in life about what happened to her and the life she led. Here's the thing. My sister was so fucking smart. She was so fucking witty. She had a dagger of words. Like, she knew where to hit you and what to tell you. She knew the truth, and she knew when things bothered you and how they bothered you and how she could address them with you. And she just had a way of telling, of like letting you know when you were wrong. I've never met anybody like my sister. I think she had so fucking much to contribute. Had this fucking cancer just giving her a few more years. Just a few more. She would have been able to do so much. I think with Erika is when she dedicated, she knew how to dedicate. I've never experienced loyalty the way I experienced loyalty from Erika. I think I mentioned this before. So I have siblings. I have other siblings. 5 siblings. There was 5 of us. My 3 older siblings are a little older than us. And so when me and Erika were growing up, it was me and Erika for a very long time. Like our brothers and sisters, my brother and sisters kind of did, like, went off and did their own thing as soon as my parents divorced. And it was just me and Erika. And so we knew the ins and outs of like what life was like for us, and I got to really know her as a person. And like I said, she lived through a lot of adversity. I'll tell you one. I remember one night my brother and my sister were fighting over the phone. My brother kept telling my sister to get off the phone. My brother wasn't around, but every time he would come around, he would always kind of like just boss us around. He was kind of one of those people who just ran the streets and was like trying to be involved in gangs and whatever. I mean, he turned his life around. He's not like that anymore, but this was the reality then. He just kind of he's just trying to make us do whatever it is that he told us to do, because that's just the way he was. So he kept trying to tell my sister to get off the phone, and she was about 13, 14 maybe. I don't remember exactly, but she was young. And she got mad, she got upset, and she left. She walked out of the house, and he didn't care, let her go. And she came right here down the street, about a block and a half away. There was a little store that had payphones outside, and so she went to the payphone to go use it. This was in the middle of the night. I think it was like either right before 12 or right past 12 o'clock. A man pulled up in a car, and this is the story she told me as to what happened at that moment. A car pulled up. She was on the phone, and there was 2 payphones, and he got on the phone next to her and started pretending like he was trying to do something. And she said that he turned around, and when he turned around, she seen a knife in his hand. And she was on the phone with the person, and she told the person on the phone, shit, he has a knife. And the person was like, on the phone was like, which was her boyfriend, was like, Erika, run home. And so she dropped the phone, and the guy went in to stab her. So he got the knife, and directly from his chest to hers. She was able, smart fucking Erika, her natural reaction, she reached and grabbed the knife before he was able to press it into her chest. He seen her, like, and she held on as tight as she could, and he pulled it out, and he seen that she didn't go down, and then she looked at him. She opened her hand and seen blood in her hand, and she just ran. And so she ran home, shows up at the house. Her fingers like severed. Several fingers are severed. And she had read somewhere, because my sister was a smart person, she was an avid reader, like she just paid attention to the news, she paid attention to things. She had read somewhere to either put pressure or to make sure that the blood doesn't flow out. So I think in a fear that she was going to lose her fingers, she went running home with her hand held high. And she just ran like upright, not down. And she ran all the way home. My brother seen her. They called the ambulance. I remember I was home. I wake up and there's like the lights are going. There no siren, just the lights. And I look out the window and I'm like, the hell is that? What's going on? And it doesn't dawn on me what's happening. And I'm like I go downstairs, and like they took her to the hospital. And they called my mom. My mom showed up at the hospital. But that's my sister's thinking. Like, she had very fast, like her reaction was fast. Her natural reaction was to, like, you know what I mean? And I mean, when I tell people like the life we led here in this neighborhood, people, it's more like, what? Like, oh, that sounds like very movie-ish. It does. It really, really does. But this was our life. Like, we grew up with gunshots and we couldn't do things. And this was the life that we lived. You know what I mean? And so, but like adversities in terms like, that's one moment, that's one instance. And growing up in this neighborhood, it is an adversity within its fucking self. But we had to live this life. And we got thrown curveballs and after curveball after curveball after curveball. And Erika got more curveballs thrown at her for whatever fucking reason she did. And every fucking time, Erika came back. Every time. And I think she wasn't given the opportunity to fulfill what she was meant to do. Her kids are here, yes. Very grateful they're here for us. I'm very happy Erika was able to give us all her 5 children. She has a granddaughter now. She was able to meet her granddaughter. I don't know, and it's difficult for me to accept that that was what she was supposed to do. Because I know she had a lot more to do. You know, and I remember before she was even diagnosed, she was already talking about going to church and spending time with the kids. Like, she was trying to get her mind right there so she can then do more. And she, in between all of that, is when she found out she had cancer. And she didn't get to do that in between more. And I think I get mad. I get so fucking mad. And when Erika turned 40 and we celebrated her 40th birthday, we had a party here at my house. Didn't even fucking get to turn 40. We had a party here at my house, and it had been the first time that it was just us. My family tends to be very silent on things. We try to keep to ourselves. We didn't. A lot of us try to show like our brave face, like when she was buried, and you know, during the viewing and all of that. You know, we had a hard time and we had a difficult time. But it wasn't her 40th birthday that we just sat there, and it was like, fuck, didn't even fucking get to turn 40. We're singing happy birthday to her, and you can hear the pain and the cries. And my mom lets out a huge wail. And that was the first time she had cried for her like that. I'm sure she had been crying like that with her in private. And we all just kind of just started breaking down little by little. And then we
yeah, and then I don't know, and I'm coming up on 40 myself, and I was like, maybe I should celebrate my 40th. I was, fuck this, I'm celebrating my fucking 39th birthday. I'm it doesn't matter. I'm just celebrating my 39th birthday like I'm celebrating a milestone of like fucking 40. Because I see the value. Like, I've always known the value in life, but it doesn't hit you until you're missing that. Okay, I think I'll collect myself and I'll let you talk, because I do want to mention a little bit like of her, like as a kid and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there's a clearly, so I think there's clearly a difference, like when I think about, like my family and, my dad's situation, my dad's diagnosis, my dad passing away. I mean, I think there's a clear difference between before he passed and after he passed. And I think it changed a lot of things. It changed a lot of dynamics. It changed a lot of a lot of things changed because, we had never gone through anything like that. And, we had never lost anybody in the family. Like,
close.
Like our immediate family. Like, we had lost grandparents and this and that.
Yeah.
But we hadn't lost like a family member, like one of us hadn't. So, it was hard to like do that. But, what I remember, when I think about my dad and, so my dad, his name was Moises Alanis. And, he grew up in a little ranch in Mexico, in El Saúz and Cerritos and, San Luis Potosí. And, my dad grew up, I didn't know too much about his childhood. I know that his mother passed away when he was 5 years old. So, a majority of his life he spent without a mother, from a very young age.
Yeah. Sorry.
And, but he didn't bring that into his, like, I mean, I think that there were parts of that always were with him, but I think we didn't necessarily see that all the time, the fact that he grew up that way, that he struggled from the beginning, to having only a dad and then
having a missing parent
and then, not really growing up with his dad, because he kind of like, his dad remarried a few times and he had more kids, and I think that's just the way that things were done back then, that you would remarry and you would have more kids. And so I think he and his siblings, I think, never really had the closest of relationships, because some of them were step brothers, some of them were step sisters, as time passed. But I think they always kind of looked for each other here and there, and we didn't know who they were. But that my dad, as a kid, like, I remember my dad playing, like, being very playful and like playing with us, I remember vividly, like, he played a guitar. He always played a guitar. He always loved music. And he would in the valley, like, he had his hat, and I think he called it el zorro, or something like el juego del zorro, or something like that, where he would play his guitar and he would put his hat on the ground, and all of us, like my older siblings and I, because we were little kids then, we would dance around and we like jump around the hat, and it was like a game that we did. And so that's like, I remember him like that, like being very strong, being very playful, and one thing, a story that I remember about him is that he didn't have a license. He didn't know how to drive, but when he got here, he needed a car. So he went and he bought a car, and he just tried to drive it out of the lot without knowing anything about how to drive a car, and he figured it out. He was first all over the place, but he figured it out, and he knew how to, like, and then he like just drove a car. But I think that's who he was. He was kind of like, like when you say I have like brute force, and I'm like, oh,
you have brute force, you do,
and you just like do stuff like a lo loco, like that was my dad too. Like sometimes like, he would just figure shit out, like one way or the other. He was just like, oh, let me just
one foot in front of the other, and let's go.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's figure it out. And I remember that about like that. And you know, I have a lot of little memories of him. But then as growing up, like I do remember too, like, you know, he was a serious guy. You know, he didn't, like, he was always playful, you know, with kids and everything, with the little kids and the grandkids especially, you know. But you know, once he got older, he was also kind of serious and quiet, you know. So I remember, like, he would drive us to high school. He would drive us to high school when we were in Houston, and he would, you know, he was always like, we didn't really talk. Like, we could drive in the car from home, like a 20-minute drive, and not saying anything, just playing the music in the car and not really saying anything. But I can't explain it. There was a feeling there that, you know, I knew how he felt about me, you know. And he knew how I felt about him. Yeah. And I think it was just like, you know, it was unspoken, but, you know, I knew like what he meant, and he knew what I meant. And you know, and when I think about like little things too, like, you know, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I remember when we were like teenagers, yeah, you know, my mom would tell my dad, take them to work with you. And, you know, to me, like, his act of like kindness to me and to my little brother, is that he would take us to work, but he wouldn't put us out to work in the sun with him. He'd be like, you know, well, you just stay here and you just like organize things inside inside the workshop, and then we'll be back later. And he would leave us like lunch and stuff. And so to me, that was like that was him like taking care of us, being a dad. And, you know, like I remember what he would say to us, like to encourage us, was like, you know, yo no quiero que ustedes trabajen en el sol como yo. You know, I don't want you to work outside in the sun like me. Like,
under the harsh sun.
Yeah, like he was like, don't do that. Do something. Everything that we've been able to, like, that we're doing is so that you don't have to do that. Yeah. And so those are like the little memories, like just like a few little memories that I remember of my dad. Like, you know, kind of who he was, how he was, like with me kind of growing up. And, you know, those are things that, you know, you don't really appreciate until, you know, then you realize that he's not here anymore. And then you're like, oh man, like all these things, all these moments that we shared, you know, that's why we shared them.
Yeah. I think one of the things, I keep talking about how my sister is witty and smart. And I say that because she was. I think one of the things that I want to share is that I'm not just saying this because I think she was smart. She was smart because she was actually sought after from schools to attend like their school, because of the way she tested and because of the way she was literally book smart. Which is why her intelligence got her very far in life, even though she had many, many adversities. I can resonate with that. You know, how my sister cared for me. Like I said, when me and my sister grew up by ourselves, my mom worked graveyard shift. And so the only other person that I really, really had, because my stepfather would lock himself in the room, the only person that I had with me, around me, until as long as she could, until she couldn't take it anymore. And she just kind of went off, like my other brothers and sisters, did her own thing, but she always came back. Like, she always knew that there was home. But my sister, she showed me a lot of love, you know. And so when we lost her, when I was sick during my depression and anxiety, before my mom retired, you would actually go drop me off with her. You remember that? Because she was one of the people that I trusted with my life. It was you, Eric, and my mom. Damn it, I got buggers running everywhere.
You want me to get a napkin?
No, it's okay.
Yeah?
I don't care.
A tissue?
No, it's fine. Yeah, so she showed me a lot of love. We didn't grow up having parties, like birthday parties. Like there was no cake, there was no present, there was none of that for us. Me or Erika. It's a big deal for a Mexican girl to turn 15 for us. You would have a party, you would have a 15, you would have something, right? They celebrated you coming into womanhood because you made it, you turned 15. I knew I wasn't going to get a party the way Erika didn't get a party. I knew that. Erika took it upon herself to throw me my first and ever party. I've never had a birthday party again ever after that, unless I threw it myself or unless I celebrated a little bit by myself and invited other people to celebrate it with me. But she basically did. My first and ever party thrown by somebody else was Erika. She bought a cake, my first cake ever at 15. Never had another cake after that. It's okay. But she did that for me. Like, I mattered to her like that. And so I did lose like a lot, you know, when she knew our mom wasn't there for us. She knew my mom wasn't going to do it for us. She knew that. My sister, you know, instead of being with her friends, at this point she was 17, instead of spending time with her friends, she did it for me. She invited my friends over and we had this big party. Like, not big, but it was like me and like 10, 5, 6 of my friends, and they came over and we just all hung out and we did the whole like throw the birthday cake in your face thing. Sang for me and just spent time with me and my stupid friends. But that's like, when I say like, I don't, fuck, yeah, like how do I explain like who my sister was to me, you know? Her Erika was to me like she's the person who explained a lot of things to me. She explained to me what relationships were, how you take care of a relationship, how you take care of a friendship, and she did it by actions, she did it by words. She talked to me a lot. She explained to me a lot of things, and a lot of what I know is from her. I'm not book smart like her, but because she showed me, she taught me those things. She taught me that common sense, gratitude, gratefulness, and loyalty go so far more than being book smart. She taught me those things, and a lot of the way I lead my life now is because of her. My first ever inspiration was her. I wanted to be like her, and she did lead a life like a little like off course a little bit, because, you know, she just had to get away, and she had to, like, you know, remove her mind from, you know, who she was, and she made sure she never brought me into that world. Like, whenever she was quote unquote doing something she wasn't supposed to do, she never brought me around her friends. She never took me into that world. And when she did, she made sure that I was safe. And then when she knew that things might get out of hand, she took me home. I mean, I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for her in that aspect.
Yeah.
I just feel like she didn't, like, the opportunities that I'm having now, she didn't get to have them. And then, again, I don't know how else to deal with it but besides be mad at it.
Yeah. No, I mean, that sucks. I mean, that does suck, you know, and it is like, she was very young and she did have a lot of life to lead, and she had, you know, she was very strong, and she was very, you know, you know, I have a lot of good memories of Erika. You know, I think she was really kind, you know, and, you know, she was a really kind person, and she loved to talk.
She did.
She loved to, like, hold conversations, and she would just, like...
How do you say she liked to shoot the shit?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
She liked to shoot the shit, and, you know, that... And she was good at it, you know?
She was.
And...
Where do you think I learned it?
And so, yeah, like, I it definitely, you know...
Yeah.
You know, everything it's hard to kind of, like, try to put people... Or try to explain who people were in such a condensed time frame.
Yeah.
But, you know... We're doing our best to try to share a little bit, you know. But
who they were, yeah.
But for the birthday thing, like, I remember, like, my dad always sang us happy birthday. Like, growing up, like, he always, like, my mom would always make us a cake. And when we came to Houston, then they started buying us cakes.
Yeah.
But when we lived in the Valley, she would always make us a cake, even if we didn't have any gifts, even if we didn't get anything. Like, it was just a homemade cake. And my dad would sing us. He would pull out his guitar and he would sing to us Las Mañanitas in Spanish. And, you know, the first birthday that we had after that where he wasn't there to sing Las Mañanitas, it was like, oh man, like it really like hurt, you know. But, you know, I think that one of my nephews like plays the guitar. Mm-hmm. And so he's kind of like, when he's there, like he kind of pulls out his guitar, and you know, you see that, like, you know, it reminds you, you know, of, you know, like, oh, you know, it's important to him. Mm-hmm. Because he also got to experience, you know, my dad singing them happy Las Mañanitas on their birthdays, and so, you know, it was important to them. But, you know, like I said, it's hard to really like try to explain so much. But, you know, I think the thing that for me also sticks out is, you know, I got to say a few words like at the church when my dad passed away, like when we were at the funeral. I don't know if it's a funeral, I don't know what you call it, but the service. Yeah. Oh, you know what, but I just remembered I was going to say this too, and I forgot. But, you know, my dad was also he was a little bit not clumsy, but he would always like do something funny. Uh-huh. Like I remember when my oldest sister got married, like he pulled off her like entire veil. Yeah. Because they had told him you're just supposed to lift up the veil, and then. No,
you had to say her hair was done.
Yeah, she had like her updo. Hair. She had like an updo. Yeah. And she had like the thing that was on it, and I guess he was supposed to lift up the veil or something. And instead of lifting up the veil, he like pulled the entire thing off. And then like I think at my sister's 15 or my niece's 15, he like broke a vase. And at my other sister's wedding, he did something else, and like he did like it was like you knew. Mm-hmm. It was funny to us because we knew like, oh, what's dad gonna do?
You gotta tell the story about when he pulled the door off.
Oh yeah, when we were like, what's dad gonna do with this at this family celebration? And it wasn't that he did it on purpose, but it was that like, you know, like I said, like that brute force that he was just like... No, the door
at the judge's thing.
Yeah. No, so it was at the courthouse. So when we lived in the Valley, the reason that we were in the Valley and that we couldn't come to Houston is because we didn't have papers. Or they didn't have papers. Like I was born here, but like my two older sisters and my parents didn't have papers, so we couldn't come this way. And so when they were in the process of getting their papers, like we had to go to a courthouse, and and he was like, it was I guess the courthouse had like a sliding glass door, and I guess the court, I don't know if it was like, I can't remember whether we were going in or out, but I think the door wasn't working, so it wasn't opening. Like the door was like stuck.
Oh, wouldn't slide,
or maybe it was closed, or they had closed it or locked it or something. But my dad, like, he like grabbed the door and was like, he like physically manually like moved the door and opened the door. And then the door like came off its hinges, and then it like almost like fell on him. So he had to stand there holding the door. And I don't remember whether he like put it back or somebody else came and helped him to put it back. But we were at the immigration courthouse. trying to get their papers, and my dad was breaking the door.
You're trying not to cause a lot of fuss, trying to be like, polite,
try not to be too noticed and whatever. Like, this is the place where we would hide from La Mira when they would come look for, when they would come driving down the streets. And like, here we are at the courthouse, and my dad would just
making it obvious you're there.
So I always remember that. That was a funny memory, like of like, just, you know, but that's who he was, you know. It wasn't intentional, but he was just a fun loving guy, and you know, he like was a strong person because he like had worked in labor all his life, so he had a lot of strength. Yeah. And I think maybe sometimes he didn't realize how strong he actually was. And I think that, like, both physically and I think metaphorically too, you know, he didn't realize how strong he was. But you know, I think he was a good dad, and he did teach me a lot, you know, in terms of, you know, hard work. You know, I think I learned from seeing him, you know, do everything that he did. You know, he never complained. He never was like, oh, you know, I have all these kids to feed, or, you know, he never, like, I never heard him complain about what he had to do, like with the work that he had to do to feed us, to keep his family in a home. You know, I never heard him complain. Yeah. And, you know, through thick and thin, he stuck it out. And so to me, like, I learned from that. You know, I learned, like, so much from that, you know, even though it wasn't like lessons where we were sitting down and having these conversations. I just, like, picked up on it, and I knew, like, that's what I wanted to be. Like, I wanted to be like him. So, you know, I think that's why I'm like, to me, it's like the actions you take, I think, are so much more valuable than the words that you can say, because I think that's what really sticks with people when they think about who you are.
Yeah. I think life teaches that what matters is, I think it's simple things like the way you live your life. I think it manifests in ways where, you know, where those kind gestures come in, and people remember you like that.
Yeah. And at the end, you know, I think he always liked to read, but at the end, you know, he really, like, picked up reading a lot more. And, you know, my younger brother would buy him books, and my younger sister would buy him books, and they would, like, he would read books, and then he would discuss them with them. You know, I never like had that, you know, where we did that. But it was good to see that, you know, to see them engaging, you know, and having that relationship. And, you know, it was like, he was really close to some of my sisters. And, you know, it was really nice to see that closeness with them. And to just, because I think he was softer with his daughters. Because I think maybe that was just the mentality, like, you know, you could show more affection to your daughters. But I don't think he never lacked showing me affection. He just was, I think we just weren't used to, we didn't know how to do it with each other, like, at that point. Yeah.
My sisters confront me about the way me and my sister Erika showed affection to each other. I think they think that me and Erika would just hug, and it came natural to us to just embrace each other a lot. And I think my other sisters get, like, they don't get annoyed, but they kind of get, like, it's not something they're used to. So they're like, what are you doing? Like, get off of me. But me and Erika, like, we were just hug. We would just embrace each other. Like, we had that relationship. Like, I just, you know, like, I told her, you know, like, we knew each other's fucking secrets. Like, we knew, like, the life we were, you know, I didn't know all her secrets. I didn't come to find out and learn about other things later on to life, but I knew her secrets. I think before she had passed away, she actually talked to my oldest niece, which is her daughter, Natalie, and told her kind of like her life, and told her, you know, the things that did happen to her. And so, like, so they can get to know her and why maybe she did the things she did sometimes. Yeah. but I did. Up until then, I knew her secrets. It was me, the one in that family that knew things. And I don't know, it's those gestures that, not go tell people your secrets, but it's those gestures that people make that, that go such a long way, That's why I tell you, Juan, I like to do like little ominous. Sometimes I think it's those little things that that you do, those little things that they just matter, and people like cherish those.
Yeah.
They do matter, and when you do them, we do them with intent.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is like sometimes you don't. I think sometimes we worry so much about like what we want to achieve, what we want to do, who we want to be, where we want to work, what we want to like. We have all these things, and at the end of the day, when you face a moment like that, you realize that all of that doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter at all. It doesn't really matter. Like, all that matters is like the little things that you're able to do or not do. Obviously you have to, like, if you're able to have the resources to do things, yeah, it does. You are able to do more, but it matters more that you're there than physically, mentally, emotionally, than if you're just like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. So I think, to me, that was the one of the things.
It's difficult to round this out, just to say like how they matter to us.
Yeah.
And what I'm not trying to do is, I'm not trying to give you a takeaway. What my purpose and my intent with this podcast was to share with you who our loved ones was, that they did pass away. As of recently, and I noticed that sometimes we would have conversations and we would talk about them, or we would bring them up. We felt the need to keep explaining who they were and why we talk about them in past tense, maybe. And that's what I didn't want to do, and I wanted to put this on here, so like that when we did talk about them, that maybe you can come back and listen to this, because they were our loved ones, and we want to share them with you listening.
Yeah. And I remember, like I was gonna say earlier, and I think I didn't say, the thing I remember saying at my dad's service was like, I knew him as my dad, but I didn't know him as a brother. I didn't know him as a friend. I didn't know him as an uncle. And those are the things that I was like, I'm grateful that I was able to know him as a son, but I'm also a little bit jealous that I didn't get to know him as a friend and as all these other things that he was. Yeah. And it was a realization, I think at that point too, that like people are not one dimensional, because I think for a long time, it's my dad and he's one dimensional. He's my dad,
Yeah.
And I think that, and then after that, I kind of like started just thinking about like everybody differently, like just because I was like, you know what, just because we have a specific relationship doesn't mean that's who that person is to everybody.
Yeah.
And they have different facets of who they are, and I
we
think,
all do.
Yeah, we all do. And I think that's what sometimes I think for me helps me to like just try to have better relationships and try to like be not like, I don't know, just in a way to like get along better, is just to like realize that everybody has different like parts of who they are.
Yeah, maybe the life you're living with them is just a moment in their life.
Yeah. And I'm glad you suggested this topic, because I was like, I don't know that I would have like suggested it, because it wouldn't have occurred to me, but I think this is a nice like a nice tribute to them.
Yeah, definitely. If I could dedicate an entire series, an entire like season to them, I would. And it's not like I can't, like I don't have control over it. Of course I can, but I don't know, maybe we can, and we'll share it with our family. We'll give it to our family so they can hear it, and they can, go back and listen to all of that. Maybe we can, but I just for our sake of like when we bring them up, in terms of like constantly having to explain maybe like little pieces and portions of them here and there, I wanted to condense it here. because I want to memorialize them in a way.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of history and spoken word, right? Like it's like speaking about them and speaking, and I think that's like I think that helps. I think when you're grieving, it helps to speak about what that person, and to speak about, you know, your memories of them. I think that helps, but I think it also you have to be ready to go there, because I think sometimes you're not, you know.
Oh, we wouldn't have been ready before.
Yeah,
we would not have been ready to do this, you know. Even say in 2019 I wouldn't have been ready to do this. I was ready now, and I knew I was ready now.
Yeah, I didn't know I was ready, but yeah.
I knew I was.
You invited it to the topic, and I thought it was a good topic idea. But I mean, like you said, it's hard to kind of close this one out, because
I don't want to, because I want to keep talking about them. But I know we you know, we probably should. Because, well, first of all, we're running out of battery, and second of all, oh wow, we've been at it for a while.
But if you've made it with us this long, to this point, we appreciate it. And you know, I hope that, you know, if you've ever had a similar situation, that you can relate a little bit, and then
that you can count on us. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I want to do. If you do relate to any of this, and you did have a loved one pass away, the way we're paying tribute to our loved ones, please do so. Send us a message. We want to know who they were, and you know, maybe a memory of them, or something that maybe you want to contribute to. Maybe it reminded you of something, and you want to tell us about it, and I want to read about it. If you want to tell us about it, I want to read about it. I want to hear about it, because I shared with you, and I want you to share with me. And so if you've gotten to this point and you want to share with us, please do so. Here's the thing: if you send us a DM, if you want to call us and tell us about it, we'll send you our number. But we've reached the end of the podcast, and we really hope and appreciate that you listened. And if you want to reach out to us, please do so.
All right. Thank you.
With that, we'll let you go. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You know I had to do it. Had to. You back up on your bullshit, don't belong to me. You acting all sleazy, I don't like what I see. I got all the game, don't get fucked in your brain. I can do you worse than you ever